Welcome to the first episode of Series 81, everyone. This month we are covering Shadowdark with designer Kelsey Dionne, and Amelia is back with us in the studio for this one. But before we get to that, we do have some important calls to action coming up after the show, so here's what to expect. Lex from the Gamewoven podcast is still in need of your help. The fundraiser is at 90% of its goal right now. We'll have more details after the show, of course, but there is also a Kickstarter still going on for a small game from the folks over at Roleplay Retcon. And on top of all that, the folks over at System Mastery have released a new sticker book. In addition to that, we have our normal Patreon information as well as our patron thank yous after the show. All of the links will also be in the show notes, so check it out if you are able to. With all of that out of the way, enjoy the show, everyone. Welcome to Character Creation Cast, a show where we discuss and create characters, the best part of role-playing games, with guests using their favorite systems. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan, and this episode, my co-host Amelia and I are excited to welcome Kelsey Dionne, creator of the game we are covering this month, Shadowdark, a dark fantasy OSR RPG.
Welcome to Character Creation Cast. We are so excited that you're able to join us today. I'm so excited for this because I have loved this game since it showed up at my door for the Ennies last year. And we aren't allowed to talk about things during the year that they're being judged because, you know, reasons, obviously. But like the moment the Ennies were over, I handed Ryan a list of things I wanted to cover. And I'm so excited that you're finally here and we get to talk about this.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks you guys for having me. Like, this is such an honor. I'm thrilled because this is like a Wisconsin reunion feeling to me. Because
I really did not know that you were from. Yeah, we've been talking about, I'm sure it'll be in our bonus outtake somewhere too, but about snowblowers and weather and all of that good stuff.
Yes.
Okay. What are your feelings on Culver's? How do you feel about Culver's?
Oh, I miss it every day.
Oh, yeah. The worst part of moving away from the Midwest.
I know.
It really is.
I think about that. I'm like, do your stores just like not have as much cheese in them? Because like, do they not have a whole cheese section?
The fact that cheese curds are not a thing, like in most states, is a crime against humanity.
It's really brutal. It's like,
we need it. It's like the perfect thing to have.
That's why our country is the way it is right now, is because people don't have cheese curd sections.
We could heal everything if we just had cheese curds available.
We could just fry some cheese, throw it in the basket. Good to go.
Problem solved. World peace. Kelsey, can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are, along with any projects that you're working on, where we can find you online, all of that sort of fun stuff?
Yeah, well, like you guys said, I'm the creator of a game called Shadowdark RPG. That's what I'm most known for. And I was so fortunate to do well with the game that it's now all I do. I write material for it. I'm currently actually working on something that's going to Kickstarter very soon, in fact, which is a regional setting for Shadowdark that combines everything I've ever written, including for other game systems, into one game world that is all self-referential and sort of takes all of that like decade of lore and puts it together in a place that people can use to run large-scale campaigns. And so that's called the Western Reaches. And I'm so pumped to finally be getting that out there because it's like my secret personal game world that I've been working on for the whole, like literally my whole experience being a game master, really. So it's fun.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm excited to see what all is in there.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get into this game, and we will start by discussing what this game is all about.
What's in a game?
Kelsey, what are the core concepts of Shadowdark?
Yes, I think its main pillar is that it is a form of or lineage style game from Dungeons and Dragons that's really trying to emulate the old school style of play, like what you saw in Stranger Things. But it's trying to use modernized game design and a lot of the innovations that we've seen come about in the last 5 decades to improve quality of life, to make that experience more targeted, faster, easier, swifter. And so that was the whole idea, was to modernize old school gaming from the ground up into something that feels like old school D&D but runs quite differently.
Can you tell us about the setting of this game?
Yes, and I hinted at this a bit earlier, but it's the core book itself it's a light touch on setting information. There's a strong implied setting in there. So there are deities, spells, character backgrounds, and a huge amount of random roll tables and encounter tables that, when all taken together, kind of convey a game world that you can use. Like, there are self-referential things between the roll tables. So if you're using those things, you're basically going to be constructing your own version of this fantasy grimdark game world for yourself. And that's very present in the core rules. And it's extrapolated upon outside of it in other supplements I've written. But when you just take the core rules themselves, it's got an implied setting.
Nice. So what sort of tools then do we need to play this game?
Well, you just need some dice. A pencil's great. And you want your character sheet and a copy of the core rules, or you can even play the game fully with a copy of the free Quick Start set, which has almost all the core rules in it. And that's really all you need. Of course, the proverbial imagination will help too. So
yes, yeah.
This one does require friends as well.
Some
or
friends,
at least,
scheduling, unfortunately,
right.
sometimes.
I know.
Yep.
We do have to talk about the bad parts here too, which is
Right,
it
the
does require
scheduling
you
nightmare.
to schedule things. Yeah. My son is trying to run his first game, and he has been wanting to do this for months, and he has not, because he cannot get his friends together. And I said, buddy, you've already had the RPG experience then.
Yes.
Congratulations. That is the full
That's how you play RPGs.
That's how you play RPGs.
Yes.
Congratulations, you're a man now.
Yes.
One thing that I really like about this game, and I'm very excited to talk to you about, is the kinds of stories and themes that this game is made to explore. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit that it has that OSR and a little bit of that kind of D&D roots and stuff, but it is its own thing. So can you talk a little bit about the themes that you wanted to explore in this game, that you've seen at your own table or writing this game, that kind of stuff?
Yes, of course. It's one of the things that the game really emphasizes is open-ended exploration, which I feel was a really strong pillar of old school games. And, we've seen so many offshoots of D&D style fantasy RPGs that lean into different pillars. And I really wanted to bring that exploration focused vibe back, and that very open-ended, you are in charge of your destiny. Go forth and choose your own path, and the world will build itself around you and will respond to what you do. And there's no real end goal apart from accumulating gold and glory. So go seek your gold and glory, and the game will start running its little engine to help you.
Oh, nice. So what do we do as characters in this game? What sort of options do we have for our gameplay for the characters?
Yes, you're going to have characters that each have a sort of assigned role. And along with your friends, once you can overcome the scheduling difficulties, you want to build a team of characters that can support each other in the different avenues that you can engage in the game with. So that would be things like exploring dungeons and surviving the environment itself of the dungeon, fighting or allying with or overcoming conflict with the denizens of those places, and really just trying to keep yourselves alive. That's another role. The priest type character is a big one. Don't go in a dungeon without a priest. But it all kind of boils down to exploring dungeon style, mythic underworld kinds of environments, and having specialized characters to help overcome the challenges that you would face in that environment.
Yeah, it does have a lot of that, that's where I feel like a lot of the classic OSR stuff kind of comes in, is that it really does have that dungeon crawl kind of feel to it. But there's I am not familiar enough personally with OSR rules as a whole to say like exactly what's different, but I found this one like eminently easier to understand and read through than some of like it doesn't feel as clunky. It feels like a little bit like quicker and snappier in a lot of ways, but it still does have the like if you like the sort of dungeon crawl, you know, discovery again, yeah, like kill things, get gold kind of feeling. This has that, I think, in a little bit snappier of a way.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's, that's exactly what I was hoping it would deliver. So I'm so pleased to hear that you got that out of it.
Yeah. We don't really have a section to talk about this. Maybe later on we can talk about how much I like the layout of this book. Maybe
that's 100% in our discussion section.
In our discussion
Absolutely.
section. Okay, good. Because I have things to say.
I'm sure
because obviously it's about me and what I wanted to say. Why we invited Kelsey here to listen to me talk about this game.
Well, you voted for it for the Ennies, so I mean, hey, you had a big role in that. So
true, fair enough. What do you feel like now that I've just said all of those things? Do you personally makes it unique? I'm always curious, especially when we talk to game designers, like what made you feel like this was a game that needed to be in the world? That there wasn't, like what itch was not being scratched that made you feel like I need to make this game?
Yeah. I think like almost on a cultural level, when you zoom back out of the D&D space and you look at who's playing what style of game, I am very passionate about wanting to invite people into the old school style and make it approachable. And, I have had friends and myself bounce off of old school style systems because they are so mechanically arcane. And I was getting worried because we have, this up and coming generation of gamers, and then a generation of gamers that eventually will be exiting, that we're carrying along this torch of old school style gaming. And I want to make sure that the new generation is invited into that style and feels like it's approachable and that they're welcomed into it, because I don't want that to be lost. I think that's a crucial part of the history of this game and a really fun and, world-changing style of game. So I wanted Shadowdark to be maximally approachable to people who may not have ever touched an old school style game before. And that was a huge driver in what I think made it unique and stand out.
Yeah, I feel like you did that. Yeah. Because like I said, I feel like it was a lot more approachable. And like a lot of times reading these games, especially, it can feel really dense, because it's a lot of numbers and a lot of like, AC and DC and like, little abbreviations for things and pluses and minuses, and, and it did feel like eminently more approachable, I think, than some of that, but still had that heart of the way, because sometimes too, when you start to mess with that, like it ends up being a whole different thing. And there's definitely room for that. But this felt like it still stayed true to, had that OSR feel without being overwhelming to read.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because my current game group in person is very much of the old school mentality, because the DM, he is, of the 80s to 90s generation of role players. That was kind of like the old school dungeon crawly map sort of thing. Yeah. Was the system
it is like,
that we were used
it is
to.
a school of role-playing games really at this point, right? It's like that is your education into gaming.
Right, exactly. And so we took a very like narrative theater of the mind game, and since he's the DM, we added OSR elements to it, and we found that things eventually got stale because the game system is not made for OSR sort of exploration in that regard.
Yeah, the narrative is just like not supporting that, like just because sometimes they do like rub up against each other, and like it is always interesting to find games too that like manage to match the narrative and the mechanics, which is something we always look for, I think. But yeah, when you just throw mechanics into a game, because mechanics are fun, but in a game that they don't go with, those things can create some friction and not go well together.
It's so true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where I at one point thought when I was developing Shadowdark that I would be using an already existing game of D&D and then just adding some modifications to it. And for exactly the reason you just said, I found that didn't work in the long run, and I ended up having to build Shadowdark mechanically from zero, from the ground up, because there's so many interlinking systems that need to work with each other all the way through to the end. And unless the game is designed that way from the bottom up, it can sometimes be a problem, So I ran into the exact same thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people run into that with D&D, honestly, is that especially with the rise of the APs and, the live plays and stuff like that it's like they're doing a lot of stuff that isn't in the rules. And when you go and you sit down and you look at the book and you're like, okay, where are the rules for all of these cool things that I'm seeing people doing? They're just not there.
Yeah.
And you start to try and add some of that. And then it's like, well, maybe that's a different game.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the history of games, this is the part where I scour the Wikipedia articles if they exist, and spout off to our audience all the fun little historical
tell the creators
tidbits
of the game about their game.
I know. This is more for our audience than the creator itself at this point. So Shadowdark was originally published in 2023, following a successful Kickstarter in March of that year, and then it went on to win 4 Gold Annie Awards in the 2024 Annie Award season for Product of the Year, Best Game, Best Layout and Design, and Best Rules, which is a phenomenal accomplishment.
Yeah.
It also won the 2024 Three Castles Award for Best Game Design. So it's not just a this is a
neat little game we found.
Yeah, this is a fantastically a well-awarded game, and I'm really excited to get into it. So my question for you, Kelsey, is when was the development for this game first started, and what was the final spark that said I need to do this?
Yeah, it's been a strange long road of twists and turns I never expected, but the game really began its development about 3 years before I published it. So roughly in 2019. I really did write the bulk of it during COVID because there was nothing else to do.
Right? We all had a lot of time on our hands. We're all let's escape into...
Exactly. Conveniently,
things that make sense. Mechanics, those go in order. And why on earth would you have been craving anything like that? I don't.
Right. I was like,
was there something going on in your life?
I know it was somehow it certainly helped get through what was a dark time in the world, but I ended up realizing I needed to write this game, kind of for some of the reasons we talked about a little earlier, where I kept looking for a home-based style game that I could start to develop adventures for, because that's actually what I was known for before I published Shadowdark. I was an adventure writer, and I had done a lot of work publishing for 5e, Index Card RPG, a couple of other systems, and I really wanted to write adventures in a particular style that leaned more old school than what I had been currently writing. And so I was looking around and I just couldn't quite find a home-based game that I wanted to say, this is the game I'm going to write for. And I almost started writing for Basic Expert Edition D&D, but then found, my audience, which was coming from a lot of 5e space, last 15 to 20 years of gaming, that was the majority of my audience. They were going to bounce off of that system. And I was like, I feel this extremely strong calling to write a style of old school D&D game that they can play. And it kind of became this crazy, I felt very driven. It's one of the few times in my creative career that I almost was watching myself write it. And it was this sort of very flow-like experience that it just poured out of me. And I think that in reality, I had been kind of mentally creating the thesis for this game since I have become a gamer. The idea behind putting this out there had been growing for a long, long time. So I put pen to paper in about 2019, but I really think I had been building up the seeds of this game for like 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, like lots of little ideas that finally were like, wait, if I put them all together, it makes.
Right. Yes, and I was drawing from memories and experiences of when I was a kid playing second edition AD&D with my pals on the bus in in the 90s. And everything that I did ended up contributing in some way. Every experience I had in the D&D space was sort of the streams that ran to the river that became this game. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
I want to know too a little bit about like play testing it and stuff, especially because you were writing it, especially during the pandemic and stuff. Like, how do you work on that? Like, how do you ask people to be like, hey, to me, I'm like always so, I don't know how people do it. Like, here's my precious baby. Can you tell me what's wrong with it? Please. Like, like that's, I don't know. It's so scary. It's so vulnerable.
It is. It's scary when you kind of put the first working draft out there, because the expectation is that people are going to be like, I don't get it, doesn't work, whatever. And playtesting this, especially during the lockdowns, was all done online in virtual tabletops because there's no other way, and thank goodness I was playing in and running several weekly games with friends. And so I was experiencing old school style gaming from the perspective of a player and game master at the same time, which I think is very informative for people who are designers. I think they need both. And, I would be running bits and pieces of stuff. I'd be, slapping down a new little batch of rules that we were going to use that night to test it out. And it was really through that the bulk of the early play testing happened. And then once the world kind of started to reopen a bit, I would be going to all these conventions. Like I love going to GaryCon is a convention in Wisconsin that I don't miss because it's very old school oriented and it's in my home state, So
I want to actually go to that one this year because I always forget that it's a thing. And like my entire extended family lives in Kenosha.
There you go.
I'm like, why don't I just go? Like, just go stay over at my aunt's house or something. And like,
when is that?
It's in May.
It's actually in March. It's in March. It's one of the M months, but
it's coming up.
It's coming right up.
Is that coming up fast?
Yeah,
my goodness.
Really soon it's going to be here. And it's probably, it's a really dear con to me because of all of that. Cause it's it's in Wisconsin. It's in the heart of, it's in Lake Geneva. And that was a very important site for D&D history. And, what I did, so once I had Shadowdark as a working like beta draft, I actually printed up a bunch of quick start sets and put together by hand, like a couple hundred packs of like quick start sets and brought them to the con and just begged people to take them. I was like, please. I was like throwing them at people. I was like, please just take this. And then I was running as many games as I could. I wanted to run so many games at these cons that I didn't schedule events. I would just say, I'm going to be there running open tables until I drop from exhaustion. So just come to my table and come play. I'll give you a character. And I'll be carefully observing how the play tests are going and taking notes mentally and running as much as I can. And so it was just really a very in-person thing at that point once I was able to get to cons. So
yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. It's fun.
I lost my train of thought. I had another question that I was going to ask, and then I got excited about a convention, and then every year I forget to go to them. I was like, when is that? And it's always like, it was last weekend. I'm like, oh.
It's coming up
every year I lose it. I'm like,
it's coming up in 51 weeks.
Yeah, I think because I clearly think that it's in May, that it's not.
You were close.
I in my head, I'm like, no one wants to come to Wisconsin in March. Why would you do that?
It's not. That's the hardest part. Is the snow always gets you in March.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, that's another one we should do, Brian, because it's like right
We
there.
should do that.
Like, there's several conventions in Wisconsin that we never go to.
I want to hold some character creation cast panels. I want to run some games.
I know.
I want to meet cool people.
It's so fun. It's such a good one. The vibes
I know,
at
and
that
one's
is
right, not that far away.
Yeah, it's probably too late to sign up to be a host of an event, but
I don't know. We can talk about it after. But
we'll talk about it after.
Maybe next year.
Maybe for sure next year. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What was my other question? I don't know.
If it comes to you, we can cut back to it. Don't worry.
We do have a whole discussion episode too, with more stuff. This is our preliminaries. Yeah. So maybe it'll come to me later. Okay.
Okay.
So Before we jump into our character creation, we usually just ask, are there any terms or concepts that you feel like people need to know to be able to follow along with this? Otherwise, sometimes it's just like, no, I'll explain as we go. But sometimes they're like, no, there are weird words for things. So,
Right. You know, a lot of them are pretty universal across the gaming space. So like when we're talking about dice, if I'm like, we're going to roll 3 6-sided dice, we'll often put that, 3d6 or 3 die 6 in there. There's the classic hit points and armor class, which are ubiquitous in role-playing games. So I don't think there's anything super out of the ordinary from someone who's familiar with the D&D space as far as character creation goes. So stop me if we come across anything and you're like, what the heck is this?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that.
I am super thrilled about this series. This is an absolutely fantastic series. Kelsey was a truly phenomenal guest. We had some wonderful conversation, both on and off the mics, and it was really cool getting to know Kelsey. I really enjoyed being able to kind of talk about this game with her, create some characters, and you'll hear about all the fun shenanigans that we get up into later on in this series. It is a 5 Monday month, so we will get 5 episodes out of this series. So the episodes might be a little bit shorter on the front end, but pick up a little bit more in the discussion episode. But I am, this game is a lot of fun. It is OSR. It is an interesting take on the old school role-playing formula. So I'm excited for everybody to hear about it. We are going to be getting into the character creation starting next week. So buckle up for a really good time. But before we let you go for the day, we do have some calls to action. And first up, Lex Olden from the Gamewoven podcast here on the One Shot Network is still needing assistance to safely and comfortably move away from their father, who just recently came out as a Nazi sympathizer. Lex does not feel safe in this situation and has moved out, but is needing assistance getting on their feet for the next 4 months. Because of this, Lex set up a GoFundMe campaign to help them survive, and it is about 90% towards reaching that goal right now. So any help from you will be greatly appreciated. You can easily get to that GoFundMe campaign by heading to helplex.charactercreationcast.com. That's HELPLEX.charactercreationcast.com, and it'll direct you right to the GoFundMe page. Outside of that very important call to action, we still have a couple more, and they have to do with those fun TTRPG projects that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks from folks on the network. So the folks over at Roleplay Retcon are still kickstarting the game called Flops, about remaking the movies that let you down by using a deck of cards and cinematic superpowers. It looks like they take their experience from the show and condense it down into a fun game to play at home. It looks really cool. I have backed it, and I'm excited to see where this goes. They have about 2 weeks to go as of the release of this episode and are working their way towards some good stretch goals. The other fun project out right now is our friends Jef and Jon over at the System Mastery podcast have put out another book called the Dungeon Meister RPG Sticker Book. They teamed up with illustrator Christy Ousley to put together a book of over 500 stickers related to all sorts of RPG fun. You can check out both of these projects from the links in our show notes. Finally, if you haven't checked out our Patreon or Discord yet, now is a fantastic time to do so. We have over 19 stickers we'd love to send you at the $10 level, some custom C3 dice, as well as personalized thank you cards at the $5 and up levels, and bonus chit-chat episodes and more at the $1 and up level. Beyond that, we even have bonus outtakes and other periodic information for our free patrons, including a potential newsletter coming, I think maybe by summer. We'll see. You can check all of that out at patreon.com/charactercreationcast, or just join the discussion and get the latest show announcements on our Discord at discord.charactercreationcast.com. And just a quick reminder, physical rewards may be slightly delayed due to Amelia's time constraints lately. She is the one in charge of sending those out, but we do promise that they will be on the way as soon as she has some free time again. So stay tuned. There is also, I believe, a bonus care package in the works at some point for patrons. It will be out there as well. So thank you so much for your patience. In addition to all of that, we'd like to thank our current patrons every episode. Your support honestly helps out a great deal. So let's do that right now. Thank you, Lieutenant DJG, aka Tigranosaurus, and Eric Bonds. Your support brings us so much joy. Daryl Holiday II, Shadim Cabal, and the Shyest Barbarian. We can't thank you enough, but we'll keep on trying. Benjamin Sweeney, Rob Fletcher, and Kevin Brown. We appreciate your support. Thank you. Tentacle Duck, John Adamus, and A3 Sketchpad, thanks for your continued support. Thank you, Cole McCallum, Carlos Salazar, and Eric S. Your support brings us a lot of joy as well. Ian Potmeyer, Liam G, and Brian Colm, thanks for believing in us. Thanks to Garden GM, Tanglefoot, and Blue Kryptonite. So glad to have you backing us. Danny, Nicole Trainer, and Liam Murray, we can't thank you enough, but we'll keep trying anyway. Thank you to Kenning, Brian Kurtz, and Mark E. Fair. We couldn't do this without you. Drew Owen, Oz, and James McGinley, thank you for your support. And finally, Sean Metcalf, our deepest thanks. And thank you to all of our future patrons. We are so close to financial stability with the show. Our Patreon currently doesn't quite cover our operating costs every month between the podcast costs and the Patreon rewards. Just one more campaign level patron or 2 side quest patrons will certainly get us there for now. But if you are able to chip in even a little bit, or even just sign up for a free tier to get exclusive updates, that would mean the world to us. And we'd love to thank you in the calls to action. Our community is full of some really welcoming people, and the patrons have been a huge part of making it a wonderful and safe place. So check it out at patreon.com/charactercreationcast and help us out. That's all we have for today's episode. Join us here next week, where we'll be diving into Shadowdark character creation with designer Kelsey Dionne. Until then, take care, everyone. Stay safe, drink some water, and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this character creation series. We'll be back in part 2, picking up right where we left off.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.